One of the biggest, most persistent headaches in modern software development has got to be keeping your front end and back end in perfect sync. As our apps get more and more complex and the deadlines get tighter, that friction just costs teams a huge amount of time. So today, we're going to dive into a framework called Schnitzel that tackles this problem head on with a really fascinating schema-driven approach. Let's see how it works. So let's set the stage a little. If you've ever built a full-stack app, you know the pain I'm talking about. It's that constant low-level friction, that nagging feeling that things just aren't quite connected right, and it can slow down even the most efficient teams out there. I mean, does this sound familiar? You change a model on the back end, you push the code, feeling pretty good about it, and boom, the front-end app just starts blowing up. Why? Because it was expecting a field that's not there anymore or a data type that's suddenly changed? It's a complete communication breakdown, but it's happening between your own code bases. And this slide, man, it just hits the nail on the head, right? These are the frustrations. You've got schema drift. That's when your data models on the client and server just slowly, painfully drift apart. Boilerplate hell? Oh yeah, that's updating the same logic in like 4 different places for one tiny API change. AI blindness is when your fancy AI assistant gives you great advice for the front end, but has no clue how it affects the back end. And infrastructure complexity? Well, who really wants to spend a week setting up databases and caching just to get started on a new idea? And this is exactly where Schnitzel steps onto the scene. And it's presented not just as another tool or template, but as a whole new philosophy for how we should be building and maintaining our full-stack applications. The name itself is actually a super clever hint about what it does. So Schnitzel is a meta framework for Flutter and Python, specifically using FastAPI on the back end. But the name is a play on the German word Schnitzel, which means interface. And that's the whole game right there. It's all about managing that crucial interface between your systems. So how does it actually do this? Well, the entire philosophy, the whole thing, hinges on one incredibly powerful idea. Instead of having two sources of truth that are always fighting with each other, you have just one. And honestly, this quote from the project's documentation, it just says it all. The idea is you have one single declarative file that defines the entire contract between your client and your server. This file becomes the absolute, undeniable source of truth for your application's data structure. And this slide right here, this shows you just how big of a deal that is. Look at the old way. You want to make one little change? Okay, first, update your Pydantic model. Then, update the FastAPI row. Then, you got to go update the Dart model. And finally, update the API client code. 4 steps, all manual, all places you can make a mistake. Now look at the Schnitzel way. You update one YAML file. That's it. The reduction in complexity is just massive. So in practice, the workflow is designed to be ridiculously simple. It's just 3 steps. Step 1, you define all your data models and API endpoints in that one central schema file. Step 2, you pop open your terminal and run the Schnitzel generate command. And step 3, you get perfectly type-safe, ready-to-use code for both your Flutter app and your FastAPI backend. Done. But what does get code really mean here? Because we're not just talking about a couple of data classes. Schnitzel generates a huge chunk of your actual application stack right out of the box. So from that one single schema file, you get your Python models using Pydantic, which gives you awesome data validation right away. You get your Dart models using Freezed for clean, immutable classes on the front end. It generates your REST API endpoints, sets up real-time data streams via server-sent events, defines background jobs, and this is huge. It gives you a completely type-safe API client for your Flutter app. No more guessing games. Okay, so whenever you talk about code generation, there's always that one big question in the room, right? What's the quality of the generated code actually like? Schnitzel addresses this head-on with what it calls a zero-tolerance quality policy. The whole point is that the generated code shouldn't be some rough draft you have to fix. It should be production-ready from the moment it's created. And they back that up with some very specific promises. The generated code will have 0 compilation errors and 0 linter warnings. It won't have any of those annoying placeholder to-do comments littered everywhere. And it's not filled with mock data. It's the real, complete structure built directly from your schema. And it goes way beyond just the code. It's also about the infrastructure. They call it batteries included, and man, they are not kidding. With just one command, you get a complete Dockerized backend environment spun up and ready to go. We're talking FastAPI for your API, a real Postgres database, Redis for caching, Qdrant as a vector database for all your AI stuff, and even Temporal for managing complex background jobs. I mean, think about it. Setting all that up by hand, that's days of work, maybe even weeks just gone. Okay, but here's where things get really interesting for today's development world. Schnitzel is also built to be AI first. It's designed to solve a really deep problem that, frankly, makes a lot of our current AI coding assistants feel kind of limited. The problem is something they call AI blindness. Think about it. Your AI assistant can see your front-end code, sure, and it can see your back-end code, but it almost never understands the whole picture, how they're supposed to work together. It doesn't know that changing a Python model needs to trigger a specific change in a Flutter widget. And that lack of full-stack context is exactly why its suggestions can feel so disconnected or sometimes just flat out wrong. So how does Schnitzel fix this? It cures this AI blindness by automatically generating a bunch of context files specifically for the AI to read. You get a Claude.md file that lays out the entire project structure. It even spins up something called an MCP server, which lets the AI directly ask questions about the schema. Essentially, that schema file becomes a perfect machine-readable blueprint of your entire application that the AI can finally understand. So, when you put all these pieces together, the claim is that this framework is more than just a minor improvement. It represents a fundamental shift in the entire development workflow. So what is this big paradigm shift? Well, it's about completely eliminating schema drift and all that soul-crushing boilerplate code. It's about getting a complete, ready-to-use backend in minutes, not weeks. It's about unlocking what AI code assistants are supposed to be able to do by giving them the deep context they so desperately need. And what does all of that add up to? You get to focus on what you actually love doing, building cool features, not spending all your time wrestling with the plumbing. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. In a world where frameworks like this are gaining traction, if the schema becomes the one absolute source of truth, then what does that make your code? The actual Dart and Python files you write? Are they just a compilation target now? An implementation detail? It's a wild shift in perspective, and you know what? It might just be a glimpse into the future of how we build software.